Good evening, and welcome to Chautauqua and Chat. I'm Charles Everett Pace.
I'm Susan Marie Franchek.
I'm George Frine.
And I'm John Dennis Anderson. We're all faculty members of the Chautauqua Training Institute.
Our goal was to strengthen the modern Chautauqua movement begun in North Dakota by Everett C. Albers by running a year-long Chautauqua Incubator program.
The result is an extraordinary new class of scholars ready to bring a roster of historical characters back to life on stages all across the country.
Here's a picture of the whole class. The folks you see who are not presenting tonight are members of our Chautauqua Training Institute cohort. Each of them is presenting one night in this series running across 5 weeks in January and February 2023.
We're dedicating this series to the late Kevin Locke, a scholar of our Chautauqua Training Institute who sadly passed away last year.
And let us begin.
Welcome to the 9th evening of Chautauqua and Chat. I'm John Dennis Anderson, and I want to thank you for joining us. Chautauqua and Chat has given you the chance to meet 11 historical figures on Sundays through Tuesdays over the course of these last 5 calendar weeks. Tonight, we have the pleasure of meeting Kasturba Gandhi, the wife of Mahatma Gandhi and an inspiration to women in her own right. But first, let me give you an overview of our program. A Chautauqua presentation has 3 parts. First, Kasturba Gandhi will speak to us. And while she's talking, your job is to be thinking of questions you'd like to ask her. We do recommend that you avoid using the chat during part 1 so you can give your full attention to the speaker. Second, we'll have a chance to ask Kasturba Gandhi questions. And third, we'll have a chance to converse with the scholar portraying her. We ask you to use the Q&A function to pose your questions. You can find the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen if you're using a computer, as I am. If you're using a tablet or a smartphone, it'll be at the top of the screen. We won't be monitoring the chat box for questions, so remember to please use the Q&A feature. And now it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker. It's October 2nd, 1943, Mahatma Gandhi's birthday. Kasturba Gandhi, born in 1869, his wife of over 60 years, is with him at the Aga Khan Palace prison for instituting and instigating the Quit India movement against the British. Visited by you, a group of visiting journalists, she's agreed to share the trials and triumphs of her life with Gandhi, whom she refers to respectfully as Bapu.
Namaste. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram. Today is a very auspicious day, and I wanted to start with Bapu's favorite bhajan about the god Rama. I am also wearing the sari he gave to me. Every single thread was spun by him on a charka or a spinning wheel like this. I understand from my loyal and very young companion and doctor, Sushila here, that you all want to hear my story. Usually everybody goes to only listen to Bapu, so I am surprised. But since you asked me, though I'm not feeling very well these days, I will gather all my strength and tell you about my life's journey. Shall we start with a special happy day, the day of my wedding? Let us go back to that time when I turned 14, almost over 60 years ago. I remember waiting with two other girls, because we were three brides who were ready, wearing our beautiful silk saris and lot of jewels. And we were in this big wedding hall in Porbandar, a city on the coast of Gujarat. And the three boys who were going to marry us were from the Gandhi family. They had come all the way from Rajkot. And now they were entering the wedding compound on beautifully decorated horses with a lot of singing and dancing. And we couldn't go and receive them. But soon we were taken into the big wedding hall and made to sit on three different mantaps or pavilions with our faces covered like this. But I could not help myself. I lifted my sari and I saw, yes, I recognized that boy because I had played with him over 7 years ago when he was my neighbor here in Porbandar. He had those ears sticking out. That was Mohan. And after that, his family and my family had arranged our marriage and decided that we should be man and wife. He was a few months younger than me, but that did not seem to matter to them. Soon, we were surrounded by so many people, all happily enjoying eating good food. And for us also, it was a big tamasha or a game. I remember the Sanskrit, many mantras or verses were recited by the priests. And my palm was given to his palm like that. And then we were asked to go around the sacred fire, my sari tied to his top cloth. And we were made to repeat some Sanskrit vows, going around the fire, taking 7 steps. That last vow I still remember. It was, I will always be your follower. You are my best friend, my highest guru, my sovereign lord. I didn't pay any attention to it then, but over the next 60 years, I would be tested on this many, many times. I was soon sent to distant Rajkot to be with my in-laws, as it was customary then. And immediately I had to start going into the kitchen and helping because we were in a big joint family, many relatives living under one roof. And my mother-in-law, Putli Bai, was very, very kind and she trained me nicely. But soon I was there chopping vegetables, making rotis with all the other women of the house. And Bapu, now I will respectfully call him that, was going to school. He would come in the evenings and that was the only time we talked to each other. But I remember he was very controlling. He would ask me, Kastur, where did you go today? Without my permission. I only went to the temple or the mandir, Bapu. Kastur, next time you have to obey me and ask me first. And when I didn't obey him, he sent me all the way back to my mother's house to punish me. But it was no punishment. I enjoyed the break. My mother-in-law was very pious like me. So, of course, we would go to the temple now and then and also pray every day at home in front of the family altar to our gods Rama and Krishna. When I was 16, I had my first child, but he did not live. By 18, I was pregnant again, and this time I had a healthy boy. The elders named him Hari Lal. Oh, he looked so beautiful, like baby Krishna with black hair. And good thing he came then, because I heard that Bapu was going to be leaving, going all the way to England to study. I had heard that he wasn't a very good student, but who was I to say anything? Because I was illiterate. Though I came from a good family of traders, the Baniya caste, my parents did not give me a proper education because girls were those days not sent to school. All we were asked to learn was how to be good mothers and wives. And my mother also told me stories from our mythology and our history about very virtuous and good women like Devi Sita from the Ramayana and Jhansi ki Rani, who was a freedom fighter. That they thought was enough for us. But Bapu, I think, was going to be sent to England because they thought that he would have good opportunities there. And his brothers were willing to give him loans. And I also gave up my jewels in order to fund him. And one day I was saying goodbye to him as he crossed the dark ocean. And he was even thrown out of our Paniya caste for a few years. He was away for 3 long years. But the family took good care of me. Now and then, his brother would read a letter from him saying that he was doing very well and studying well. And even one picture they would send of Bapu looking very handsome. When he came back after 3 years, he was a barrister, no longer the immature young boy I knew. I was hoping we would settle down and have a nice life right there in Gujarat. But that was not meant to be. He was not happy with his job. And he wanted to go away once more to another distant land, this time South Africa, where some Indian merchants wanted his legal help. Oh, as a Hindu wife, I didn't have much to say about it except just say goodbye again. By now, I had another child who the elders named Mani Lal. Bapu was gone for another 3 years. And when he came back, he wanted to take us with him to South Africa. I was very nervous. I had never left Gujarat, and going to a faraway land like that, I thought, what would happen to us? But I was also excited because I thought the children would have a good education and we can settle down, a small family, and I can get to know Bapu better. So when I was 27 years old, in 1896, we left by ship to Durban in South Africa. We sailed out of Mumbai, that the British called Bombay. And soon we were there on the ship called the Kurland. Bapu had made me wear a very stylish sari and covered shoes, which I found very uncomfortable. That I missed the simple home food we used to eat, which was very tasty. Used to eat it with our fingers like this in Gujarat. And soon we were caught in a terrible storm. The monsoon, they said, and the ship went like this for 4 days. And I thought, are we all going to die? We went into our cabins and we started praying. But Bapu was completely all right, helping everyone on the deck. Another bigger storm was awaiting us as we got close to Durban. First, they would not let us get down from the ship, saying that we may be carried from Mumbai. And then After 3 weeks, when we were allowed to leave, I noticed that there were so many people, white people, men standing there, throwing things at our ship and shouting, "Go back, go home." And then I even heard, "Go home, Gandhi." Bapu, is that meant for us? Yes, Kastur, he coolly said. I published something called the Green Pamphlet when I was in India, listing all the grievances of the Indians in South Africa. They must have heard about it. Now they want us to go back and not make trouble. Bapu, you didn't tell me all this before. Then it got only worse. We were the last family to get down from the ship, and Bapu put me and the boys in a carriage and sent us to our host's house. He was going to follow us on foot. He didn't come for some time, and we waited and waited. And then he came. He was bruised and bleeding. All his clothes were tattered, and his turban was unraveled. What happened, Bapu? Kastur, the white mob attacked me. If not for this kind white lady, the wife of the superintendent, I would be dead by now. Bapu, what are you saying? What kind of a welcome is this, Bapu? I wish we could go back. Of course, there was no going back then. We settled into a nice large house called Beach Grove Villa. Bapu had a good practice there as a lawyer. It was a huge house and many people were coming and going. And Bapu welcomed everyone with open arms. So I wondered what caste they were from because I had come from that system. And then some clerks came and started living with us. And someone would even leave a dirty chamber pot under his bed, and Bapu would go and clean it willingly. I found that very disgusting and shameful, and I cried about it to Bapu, and he remarked, "Kastur, you should do that happily. How could one be happily doing such things, you tell me?" And I was worried about what I was seeing, Though we also in India were under the British, I had never seen such injustices because I lived a sheltered life in Gujarat. But here, the white South African government and the people did not treat us equally. They thought we were just coolies, indentured laborers. And they would spit on us, push us, not want to share their train carriage with us, or even walk on the same side of the street. I did not want my boys to go into town. I was worried about this very much. And but Bapu, of course, was getting very involved in community service even then. He believed in seva, and he wanted us all to follow in his footsteps. It was not easy because he wanted to lead a simple life. Though he made very good salary, he wanted us to dismiss our servants and start doing everything by ourselves. Slowly got used to it because I had worked hard in Gujarat after all. And the boys, I was worried about what was happening to them because Bapu refused to put them in any school, saying that this is not all right, that is not all right. And he said that he would teach them. But tell me, where was the time? He was working from morning till night. Little bit here and there he taught them, and I was worried they would become like me, illiterate. Bapu had tried teaching me back home in Gujarat, and he had not made much progress because I would get so tired and sleepy at night when he was ready to teach me. So I fought and I cried, but Bapu was very strong, and he was getting stronger and stronger in his views, and more involved with helping the community and fighting for justice. Well, a new century dawned upon us, 1900. And by then I was blessed with two more sons. Yes, first Ram Das was born, and then Dev Das. And in 1901, Bapu announced that we could go back to India. I was so happy, and I thanked the gods for listening to my prayers. And I remember the Indian community gave us many send-off parties. We were so popular. And they gave good gifts to us, money as well as jewels. I remember this beautiful gold necklace I got. But Bapu made me return everything, saying that it was for our service and not for our personal use. I cried then, but now looking back, what was the use of all that? All I needed were these glass bangles that I've been wearing ever since, and my bindi, the mark of a married Hindu lady. We sailed back to Mumbai, and we're just starting to settle down to a nice, comfortable life, when Bapu got another call, a desperate call from his friends in South Africa, saying that the situation had become very bad and requesting him to come back to help. Of course, Bapu could not say no to them. And he sailed in 1902, and we followed him in 1903. This time we settled down in another city in the interior called Johannesburg. And Bapu got more and more busy talking to the leaders from the Indian community, not only the Hindus, but the Parsis and the Muslims as well, because the atrocities against the Indians and all the other coloreds was getting worse and worse. And Bapu published a paper called The Indian Opinion. And many people started contributing to it, listing all the problems. At that time, Bapu also had an idea to start a commune where we would live with other people and share all the work. He had been reading many books and talking to many people, Europeans who were there, who thought like him. And soon he purchased a big piece of land near Durban in a place called Phoenix. They moved the printing press there, and Bapu wanted us all to move and live over there once they constructed some small houses for us. This was going to be a big change, I know. I wondered, is this like what Sita Devi in the Ramayana had to go through, going to the forest with her husband? Maybe that was in my fate. So I agreed, and we started planning to move there. But meanwhile, they were also coming up with a new movement, something called Satyagraha. In fact, Bapu told me that it was based on my own behavior. When I got angry or upset about something, I would quietly disobey him. Yes, I had done that in the past, I remember. And Bapu liked to joke about these things, so maybe it was a joke. But soon there was a contest that was put in the Indian opinion paper, and a name was selected from Bapu's own relative. And Satyagraha became the name of the movement. It was called Truth Force. That was what it meant. And everybody, the leaders in the community, decided that they will try to oppose the government, the South African government, with truth and non-violence. And why do you think that started? Well, one of the main reasons was that there was a law suddenly that was going to be passed that said that all of us Indians had to get fingerprinted and registered and carry those passes even if we were to cross into the next province. Everybody was very offended by that. And people refused to go and get registered. And Bapu, of course, was meeting with them. Hundreds of people would meet in the mosques and in the community centers to discuss this. We moved into that Phoenix ashram, what I call, which is a settlement. And I got very busy because I had to run the kitchen. We were welcoming people from all over, not only our relatives and friends, but also some Goras or white Europeans who were our friends. So I had to organize meals, make sure everybody was doing their part of the work because we didn't employ anybody. Even cleaning the latrines was to be done by us. We started settling down, growing vegetables in the fields and harvesting pineapples, which were growing very nicely there. And people soon started calling me mother or Ba. That is how I got my name. I became Kasturba. And they were calling Bapu Gandhi Bai over there, and that became Bapu eventually. And now there was one more thing that I have to mention. There was an outbreak of the plague that happened a few years earlier. And Bapu went to assist with some medical help. He took me along and trained me to help the women with their needs and teach them nutrition and hygiene, because all these laborers, the Indian laborers who worked in the fields, in the coal mines, they were living in very bad conditions, and these things used to spread so much among them. So I got some experience with looking after people from Bapu. In 1908, I remember I was hosting a function for my daughter-in-law who was pregnant. And suddenly there was a telegram saying that Bapu had been arrested. I put down my food and I vowed that I would eat only gruel as long as he was in prison. He was there for 2 months. That was his first time. But I soon got used to it because my older boys, Harilal and Manilal, who are now growing up, they started going to prison after that. And they became satyagrahis like Bapu, or the followers of the truth force. Another thing that really upset the Indians was a 3-pound tax that was imposed on everyone, even the women. And we thought it was very, very unnecessary and too much. 3 pounds was a lot of money for most of us. Now in 19 13, I remember. By then, Bapu's friend, had donated a big farm for us outside Johannesburg and given it the name Tolstoy Farm. So we also started setting up a lot of houses there to host the satyagrahis and their families, especially when they lost their jobs because they were protesting. All peaceful protesting, but they would be beaten, they would be arrested, and they had to endure so much hardship. So we needed a place to shelter them. But I happened to be back in Phoenix, which is closer to Durban, and in another province, not Transvaal, which is where Johannesburg is. Well, I was cooking one day in the ashram when Bapu came and started talking to me. He said, Kastur, do you know you are soon going to be my concubine, not my wife? Bapu, what are you saying? You took the vow of celibacy. I don't mean that, Kastur. The government is going to say that our marriages are not valid anymore because we did not get married according to Christian rites. Bapu, that doesn't sound right to me. What happens to our children? Do they become illegitimate? What happens to our honor? Kastur, if you're worried about your honor, why don't you join and protest like us? But Bapu, you said that we women will not be able to withstand the jail life. Well, Kastur, if you can't, you may die and I will worship you as a goddess. Bapu, stop joking. We laughed and went to sleep. But it was not a joke. Very soon this became a law. And we were at risk. I thought I had to do something about it. Enough of all this oppression. I decided to become a satyagrahi. Later that year, I joined 3 ladies and 12 men. We took the train all the way to the Transvaal border and we crossed it illegally on foot without any papers or our passes. Of course, we were all arrested right away and sent to Moritzburg prison. It was not easy. We had hard labor for 3 months, but somehow we managed with very little food. And every evening after we did the hard chores of scrubbing the floors and washing the clothes, we would sit and pray, sometimes singing our favorite songs, asking our gods, Rama and Krishna, to come and help us. Kabhi Ram ban ke, kabhi Sham ban ke, chale aana, Prabhuji chale aana. And I think our God saved us because at the end of 3 months, we were all released. And Bapu, who had also gone to prison before that, came to receive me. And he took one look at me and he said, Kastur, you have become all skin and bones. You look so weak. I don't feel weak, Bapu. I feel very strong. I have become a satyagrahi like you. Isn't that what you wanted? And we both smiled and went back to the ashram. I got very sick and I almost died. But somehow God saved me. And I heard that many other women joined the movement and they became satyagrahis, even carrying their little children and crossing the border illegally. And thanks to all the efforts, the £3 tax was withdrawn and our marriages made legal. By now, of course, we had taken the vow of poverty along with the vow of celibacy. And we were happy to be part of the Satyagraha movement. It was time to go back to our home country. And we were getting calls from there to join the freedom struggle back in India, which of course was under the British Raj, as it is today. But Bapu wanted to first make a stop in England to meet the great Gokhale Bai. So we set sail from Cape Town in 1914. I was 46 years old, I think. And Bapu showed me in London his old college and we met some of his friends. But there was a big war going on in Europe and wounded soldiers coming back to England. Bapu, of course, wanted to help the wounded, and we both even took some classes in nursing so that we could assist. We could be there only for a few months because both of us, we got sick. The weather did not agree with us. So in early 1915, we sailed back home to India and went to Mumbai first. There in the harbor, we saw many people standing with garlands and welcoming us with chants. I was very surprised. This was so different from what we had received when we got into the port of Durban. And I was even introduced as the heroine of South Africa, and Bapu, of course, the hero. What heroine, I thought, looking down at my simple sari. We soon went all over India to find out what was going on in our beloved homeland. We had been away for too long. We went with the masses, dressing like them, by third-class train, bullock cart, lorry, however we could go. And we observed very sadly that our country had become so poor. People were suffering from excess taxes and rent. The poor people getting poorer and poorer, especially in all the rural communities. So Bapu and I decided that first of all, we had to open an ashram. We went back to our beloved state of Gujarat and we opened a small ashram there. I remember Bapu in the beginning itself said that everybody would be welcome there, regardless of caste or creed. And that was put to a test immediately. A young family arrived from the untouchable caste, which is even below the first four castes. And they always do the lowest of jobs. And they brought a little child and the father was a teacher, but the other members of the ashram were not happy. They did not want to have any contact with them. I myself was in two minds. But the little child Lakshmi came running to me. I picked her up and I looked at her and I said, how can I discriminate? She is also a child of God. No wonder Bapu has named them Harijans, or people of God. And I hugged her, and from then on, all the doubts about caste just vanished from my head, and I would embrace them in my heart and in my life. In fact, I adopted Lakshmi after her parents passed away, and she became my daughter. We had to leave that ashram because the neighbors were not approving of it and would not even let us go and take water from the common well. There was too much caste discrimination there. So we, with the donated money, we bought a beautiful land by the Sabarmati River. And it became our Sabarmati ashram, where I spent many years. Now and then I would go with Bapu out into the community, and we were invited to this place called Champaran, the foothills of the Himalayas. And the farmers there were being tortured by the indigo barons. When they could not pay their taxes or their rent because of a bad monsoon or failure of monsoon, their houses would be set on fire and their families were living in poverty. I went house to house and I started encouraging them to teach their children, send them to the little schools I had set up with our volunteers. And Bapu was negotiating with the landlords. And I remember once I met a lady there who was very dirty. I told her to go and take a bath in the river. And she said, "How can I, Maji? I have only one sari. Ask Bapu to give me another." I felt so sad. And I went to Bapu and said, "We have to do something about this." And we wanted to revive the Khadi movement where we would spin our own cloth. Yes, we went to Sabarmati ashram and we got charka like this made out of wood. And soon we wanted to revive this old tradition where we would spin. Yes, all the cotton that was being grown was sent away to England and to big mills in Mumbai, where they would make it into very fine textiles that nobody could afford. So we started growing our own cotton and making it into thread and spinning it and sending it to local weavers. Within a few years, this movement became really popular. And Bapu would joke that my spinning was very good, much better than him. He would start competing. But what was more important was this became part of the Swadesh movement. Self-reliance, where we bought things only Indian. And the charka or the spinning wheel even became part of the Indian National Congress's flag in 1921. See it here. I made this secretly to show you. Then we were spinning in the 1920s. It became a big movement and lakhs of people were employed as spinners and weavers. And we all started wearing khadi, pure homespun cotton. And the men started wearing dhotis, we women started wearing saris. And the British government, of course, was not very happy about this, especially in 1930 when many of the mills in Mumbai had to close down and also all the piece good merchants were suffering. Because we not only did this, we started burning all the foreign goods in bonfires. And at all our meetings, we would encourage people to only buy homespun khadi and wear it. Well, the 1930s, I was in my 60s then and getting more frail and not well, but my spirit was alive because all around there were cries for freedom. And we wanted to become independent of this slavery, which has been going on for over 100 years now. And I remember during that time, I went to jail 6 times, twice solitary confinement. Bapu, of course, spent many more days in jail, and he would fast even for up to 21 days. but I did whatever I could. And I remember the end of the decade, back in my own hometown of Rajkot, there was this villain, who, ruler of a princely state called, his name was Thakur, and I found out that he was imprisoning all the satyagrahis or the freedom fighters and abusing women. I marched with my group there, and of course, he soon imprisoned me in a small room in his large house. And I again prayed to Rama and Krishna, asking for protection. And soon I was released, and he had to pay the price for his behavior. That was known as the Rajkot Satyagraha. Sushila, my throat is getting parched. Thank you so much for this coffee. I hope you didn't show it to Bapu, because he will get upset. He has been telling me for a long time to give up coffee. But how can I? It is my one weakness. I've given up many things. But the other thing that I could not give up is attachment to my children. Yes. Bapu says that the entire world is our family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam in Sanskrit, and we should not have any attachment, special attachment to our children. But how is that possible? Well, my one big sadness is what happened to my oldest son, Harilal. He has gone down a very dark road. And only thing I could do for him is take care of his 3 surviving children and give them a good life in the ashram. My other 3 sons have done well. They have become satyagrahis, following the path of dharma like Bapu. Now let me take you to 1942, a very important time when the Congress party announced that they were going to launch the Quit India movement. Do or die became the mantra. And in Mumbai, I remember in August, they were going to have many meetings announcing this after their working committee decided. Of course, they were thrown into prison by the British, all the leaders of the Congress. And I offered to take the place of Bapu. And I went to Shivaji Park, where there was a huge gathering of freedom fighters, all wearing khadi. And I made a little speech. I remember part of it. The women of India have to prove their mettle by joining the movement without any caste or creed differences. We have to follow truth and non-violence. Of course, I was immediately arrested and brought here to Aga Khan prison along with Sushila. The only good thing was Bapu was already here. And after much separation, we got to spend good time together, walking in the garden and spinning, though my spinning became much slower than his. He even tried teaching me geography by showing a orange. He wanted me to practice my letters in Gujarati and Hindi. But when I asked him for a notebook, he said, "Why do you need a notebook, Kastur? Your writing does not deserve that." I was hurt and he was mocking me. So I told him that I would not study from him anymore. And I have been trying to read a little bit of the Bhagavad Gita and the newspaper since then. But Sushila, I must tell you one thing. In 1933, I wrote a diary just with whatever I did every day, and I've kept it in the ashram. So please bring it, whether I'm here or not, and show it to Bapu to prove that I can read and write. Please do that for me. And before I take leave of everyone, I like to sing. So I want to end with this anthem of the Indian National Congress called Vande Mataram, which is a tribute to Mother India. And it was adopted by them in 1937, but of course banned by the British. They want us to sing God Save the King instead, which I refuse to do. So here I am going to end this by singing, and please join me if you can. Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Sujalam, Shufalam, Malaya cha Shitalam, Sashya Shamalam, Mataram, Vande Mataram. I bow down to Mother India. May she get freedom very soon. Namaste. And now you have patiently listened to my story. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them to the best of my ability.
Thank you so much, Kasturba, Gandhi. And yes, we do have a number of questions for you. And I want to remind the audience again to enter their questions using the Q&A feature. You talked about supporting your husband so much in his Satyagraha movement. Did you ever attend meetings and discussions with leaders from around the world with your husband?
Yes, whenever I was there at the same place as him, they would come to the ashrams. I would sit and listen, spinning in my wheel usually. I would not talk much, but I like to listen, and whatever I could understand, I would, it would stay in my head.
I see. Thank you. It was fascinating to hear you talk about the importance of spinning homespun cotton and the opportunities it gave to women for employment and skills. How did you learn to spin, and your husband as well?
We just learned by ourselves, and we got some, initially there were a few traditional spinners who we had heard of in the rural areas, in the villages. So when we got the charkas built, we asked them to come and instruct us, and we learned from them. And after that, we were able to teach the others as well.
Very good. Fascinating to hear the importance of that, even being put on the flag, the spinning wheel being put on the flag. You sounded to have many activities in the ashram and teaching nutrition and hygiene and even nursing. Did you have outside friends beyond all of this work? Do you have other alternatives to working all the time?
I was happy doing seva from the morning till the night. But as I grew older, I would take some rest in between. But mostly, the ashram had everything. There was enough work to keep us all busy. And my entertainment was just getting together with the other ladies and singing my spiritual songs and, doing all the pujas that we did there. So I didn't have to go outside unless I accompanied Bapu sometimes when he went for some conferences and some work to help the Harijans, those kinds of things. I went with him.
I see. Could you talk a little bit about the vow of celibacy that your husband took and how you felt about that?
We were both 37 years old. I had already had 4 healthy sons, many women's problems that I cannot mention here. So I think Bapu wanted me also to have some relief. He did not want me to have any more children because I had almost died, during the delivery. So when he proposed this and said we should follow, I agreed. I said, this is a good idea. Now we can focus on our seva or community service.
I see. You mentioned that Bapu was almost or expelled from your caste. How did that happen? That was back when he was studying in England, I think you said?
Yes, just before he left, that time, it was believed that we should not cross, the big waters and go. So because we cannot continue following our traditions as Hindus. So the elders from his caste were very upset and they sent him out. But after he came back, he had to make amends and they accepted him back.
I see. What does your husband's family think of his leading this independence movement?
When we returned to India in 1915, unfortunately, both his brothers had died as well as his sister. But before that, his brothers have helped us a lot, very much. And I was also staying in their house and they helped with his education funding. So they were a little upset when Bapu said he's taking the vow of poverty and he could not send money back. But his, many of the other relatives actually supported us. They came and they stayed in the ashram and they were a big help to me, especially because when Bapu was away, traveling, I had this family with me along with the other residents of the ashram. So many of Bapu's family members also became freedom fighters, especially the younger generation.
I say, what about your family, your parents? How did they feel about you leaving your home and going to South Africa?
Yes, it was, difficult, but, the view was at that time that the girls should adjust to whatever is presented to them. That is how we are all brought up. So even sending me far away to Rajkot from Porbandar, it was, I felt sad, and my mother also cried when she said goodbye to me. But as long as we are settled and we have children and we have happy family life, they just bless us from afar. And by the time I went to England, I also lost, the elders in my family. And when I came back, my one brother had passed away with his whole wife and child. They got a terrible illness. So I just had one brother when I came back. And it was good to see them in Rajkot. But we had to make a new life for ourselves. And the movement was much bigger than our family. As Bapu said, we cannot have the attachments that gets in the way of our good work. So we had started treating the entire world as our family.
I see. When you and your husband were children, did he exhibit some of the same traits he developed as a leader?
He was bossing me in the beginning and controlling me, though he was younger than me by a few months. But I think, we didn't spend that much time together. So he was immature until he went to England. When he came back from England, I noticed he had self-confidence and he was getting to be very responsible. And also he had read a lot of books and, had conversations with people in England that influenced his thinking very much on a different level. I could not understand much of that, but I know that it changed him and he started thinking about, humanity as a whole, not just our little family.
Very good. Do you know when and why so many Indians moved to South Africa?
Because South Africa also was a colony, like the British colony. So they needed labor there, to work in their mines and in their plantations and fields. So they were encouraged to go. And everybody went thinking it would be a better life. Only when you reach there, you know what kind of problems there are. So many went from South, North India, from everywhere. They sailed, and it was the British government also encouraged them to go because it was one of their colonies after all.
I see. You had 4 sons, and you mentioned that the oldest went through a dark time and that you helped raise his children. Could you tell us more about what happened to him and your other 3 sons?
Yes, with Hari Lal, from the beginning itself, he was clashing with Bapu, and Bapu had very high ideals for the children, and also Hari Lal was not given a chance to study and go take a scholarship and go to England. It was Bapu withheld that from him. I don't know if he would have done well. He was only an average student, but he had that anger, in him. And though he did join the Satyagraha movement in the beginning and even went to jail, after that, he felt always this anger against Bapu, and they could not, see eye to eye. And he also went against our wishes and got married very early without our consent, went and convinced the relatives in India and got married when he was 18, and he got married to a 16-year-old. And Bapu was very much against that since we went through this child marriage. So after he came back, somehow, he has had also tragedies. His wife, he had 5 children, and his wife and 2 children died very young. And he started drinking very much, and he could not control himself. He always had love for me, and I also had a soft spot, my oldest child after all, but he went down this path of adharma, which means not the righteous path. But my other 3 boys, they also took part in the Satyagraha, and they were able to lead normal lives. They got married late. They were obedient to Bapu, got married only in their 30s. They had children and families, and though they were also not sent to a proper school, they became journalists and satyagrahis. So I was happy that at least they had good lives.
Did you and your husband pick your other 3 sons' wives?
One of them was outside our community, he married actually some South Tamil girl. It was a love marriage, but the other 2, we kind of encouraged them to get married from some friends' children that, they were ready to get married. And all the 3 wives were much younger than them, but they were good wives, and they all were blessed with children, 3 children, 4 children each. So I had many grandchildren around me.
Oh, well, congratulations. So we have time for one last question. You've talked about your husband being rather harsh at times. Can you share some tender moments between you?
Bapu would joke very much. And sometimes he called me a tyrant, because I tried to tell him not to do this extreme diet. He would suddenly say, give this up, give that up. And if I, start making neem chutney, neem is the most bitter leaf. He wanted me to make neem chutney. I did. And I said, everybody in the ashram is going to run away. But he really cared for me. And I remember this. I was very sick once, and Bapu, he somehow got all this knowledge. I don't know from where, but he said I should give up eating dals, pulses, which are very much part of our vegetarian diet. I said, how can I give that up, Bapu? I cannot. Then he said, I will give it up and set an example. So he gave it up. He stopped eating. Then what could I do? I had to follow in his footsteps. So he set a good example, but he always did it first without expecting others to do. He always did the right thing, what he felt was right. And then he expected us to also follow, which I thought was very compassionate and very nice of him to do, because he needn't have given up pulses at that time.
Thank you so much for sharing those tender memories, and for telling us so much about your extraordinary life. Well, I've learned so much from you tonight. So we want to thank you and say goodbye to Kasturba Gandhi. And now we will meet the scholar behind Kasturba Gandhi. Rupa Mohan is a professional storyteller from Walnut Creek, California. She trained at the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, telling folk tales to visiting school groups. Rupa has since expanded her repertoire to multiple genres, including narratives about her childhood in South India. She serves on the board of the Storytelling Association of California and is also an active member of Asian American Storytellers in Action. Welcome, Rupa Mohan, and thank you for your outstanding presentation of Kasturba Gandhi. And now we have some time for some questions for you, Rupa. And there are a number of questions we didn't have time for of Kasturba that I think you might be better able to answer. Did Kasturba Gandhi ever learn to speak English?
She learned a little bit, just broken English, because I guess she needed to in South Africa, to communicate with the others. So it is said that it was very broken, but she did understand, and push come to shove, she could use some English.
So people are curious how you became literate. You did talk about Bapu trying to teach Kasturba English, and she wasn't a very good student at that time. But then later, when he tried, you sort of taught yourself, it sounded like. How did that come about?
He did initially. He taught me the Gujarati alphabet when, and I he taught her the Gujarati alphabet when we were newlyweds. And then after that, over the course of time, Kasturba was actually she was very intelligent. She just hadn't had a good education. So she was able to pick up. She could do like math in her head. She needed to use those skills in the ashram. Running the big ashram was not easy. So she picked up skills, and I think she was fully capable, and she would slowly try and read. I don't know how much English she read, but she was certainly able to, read and write basic Gujarati, which is her mother tongue, of course. So I think that's how she became literate. But
You said she read the Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, she memorized, actually. She memorized the Bhagavad Gita. Maybe somebody read it to her. She memorized it, but she knew the important stanzas from it, the verses from it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Could you talk about the sources that you used for your presentation, the research that you did, and particularly how did you find material written by Kasturba?
That was my best find, her diary that was recently published just last year. And a storyteller friend told me about it. And that was the only thing that actually was hers, in her own voice. And it was discovered in some society in Indore, a city in India. And her great grandson, Tushar Gandhi, published it recently. So that was great to see all her daily activities chronicled in it in her own words, and in Gujarati, of course. But before that, my main sources are, first I turned to her family, a book by her grandson, Arun Gandhi, and then people who had actually lived with her, like Sushila, the doctor. She has her own memoir. And then, of course, Bapu's, his autobiography about his experiments in truth that had many of the incidents there. But I wanted to know more about Kasturba. And then there was another book by Sita Kapadia, That was wonderful because she went and interviewed, people, the survivors who had actually interacted with Bapu and Kasturba, and in some way or the other. So that was a wonderful source. There's a lot out there, but some of it is not very credible, and they just jump to conclusions.
I see. What characteristics of Kasturba did you find the most inspiring?
I think how resilient she was. She was thrown into all these situations outside her comfort zone, being an immigrant, first of all, at that time when, people didn't even cross the oceans, to go to the strange land and face all the racism there and raise 4 children with poor health. I think it was really commendable, and that's why she is my unsung hero.
Wonderful. I understand there's been some controversy about Bapu's relationships with other women later in his life. Can you talk a little bit about that and how Kasturba dealt with it?
Kasturba was welcoming to some of these women. In fact, these foreigners who would come and, they kind of gave up their lives and wanted to be part of the ashram. There was this Meera, a lady who became Meera Ben, a European. And so Kasturba loved her very much. But some of the other women, I think she found a little bit annoying, maybe the ones who tried to invade her kitchen. Like there was this Danish beauty that, who came in a little later. And Bapu was, very friendly with her, and Kasturba did not want her in her kitchen. So I think Kasturba tolerated it. But, she, of course, trusted Bapu, that she did not think it was anything inappropriate in his, the way he was behaving with these women who came basically because they thought he was a Mahatma and they wanted to, serve him and to be there learning from him like a Shishya or a student. But, Kasturba, like any other woman, I think she had her favorites.
Well, we have time for a final question. How did Bapu appreciate Kasturba, do you think? Did he appreciate her contributions?
I think he did, though sometimes he kind of ignored her, especially when, he was surrounded by all these very intellectual women who had studied a lot, very different from Kasturba. But he would always acknowledge that she was, his soulmate. And even after they were parted because of long jail sentences, and he would write to her, and he was always very concerned about her and very compassionate. And I think the ultimate testimony is when, after she passed away, soon, few months after this portrayal date, he could not even leave her body. He was there for many hours, really genuinely mourning her death. So that proves that she was indeed his soulmate.
Thank you. What an inspiring presentation you have given us tonight, Rupa. We appreciate so much getting to know Kasturba Gandhi through you. And I also want to congratulate you on your first grandchild, who I understand was born recently. And so we'll say goodnight. And I want to thank you, our audience. We're so glad you chose to join us this evening for Chautauqua in Chat. And we hope you'll join us again. We have 2 more programs that address the broad theme of encountering the world of work. Tomorrow night, you have a chance to meet Frances Perkins, the first woman to serve on a United States presidential cabinet. And on Tuesday night, you'll meet the leader of a massive miners' strike in the 1880s, Michael Mooney. You can use the same link you used for today's presentation, and do please invite your friends to join us. We hope to see you then. Good night.
Thank you.